Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben, these are my tomes, and today we are extending Summerween by looking at the Universal Monster book tag. Over the past week, I've been taking part in Summerween, the readathon to bring the spooky season into summer, and reading all those horror books really got me thinking about what kind of tag can I do that is associated with the spooky season and with horror. I came across the Universal Monsters book tag on the Witty and Sarcastic Book Club blog, linked down in the description below. The idea here is pretty simple. We're taking iconic Universal monsters, breaking down the core element of that film, and then linking that to an associated question to go find a book that relates to it. Let's go ahead and jump into number one, which is Dracula. Name a book with a charismatic villain. Initially, I wanted to go with Dr. Dinosaur for this category because I find him very funny, and that is in a way charismatic, but in discussing it with Amanda, had the discussion of, well, charismatic could mean charismatic for the audience or charismatic within the world of the book. And so I tried to find a character that had both of those aspects going for them, and I landed on Gentleman Marcone from the Dresden Files. Gentleman Marcone shows up in book one of the Dresden Files, although he doesn't do too much in this particular volume. His presence over the course of the series gradually gets larger and larger as he finds himself more and more entwined with the supernatural aspects of this world. As a mob boss, he is trying to leverage his already sizable personal army and infuse that with elements from the supernatural world in a bid to accumulate more power. Obviously, within the course of the book, he's a very charismatic figure. He draws a lot of powerful people to him, usually those who are on the more morally gray or outright evil side, but it's undeniable that he has a certain kind of charm, which Dresden admits as well. Later on in the books, we do get a bit of backstory from Marcone, and it does help flesh out the character and make him a little bit more three-dimensional. He's never mustache-twirlingly evil. He sometimes aids Dresden, he's sometimes outright against him, whatever will be advantageous to him in the moment. But you come to find the motivation behind all of his machinations. And as I often say about my students, it's not an excuse, but it is a reason. And so that's nice to see that this character, who started off kind of in the background, is becoming more and more prominent and being more and more fleshed out. Question number two is The Invisible Man. What is a book that is more than meets the eye? And I was so tempted to just do Transformers again, but I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to give you an actual answer with Confessions. So this is one of a couple of books I read from the same author, this along with Penance, that are in this genre of Japanese fiction, which relies on teasing out the story very slowly over the course of the book. Each chapter will have this dramatic revelation right at the very end that makes you go, what? I have to read on to the next one and see what happens. Confessions begins with a teacher gathering up her class and letting them know that she is retiring due to the death of her daughter, but also that she knows that two of her students were responsible for this death, which had been ruled as self-inflicted. And from there, the plot really starts to spiral out of control. We get perspective chapters from the teacher, from the two kids, I believe from another student, another adult. And again, each time you get these fresh perspectives, the rabbit hole gets deeper and deeper as to the reality of the situation, the links that people are going to reveal these truths in this town, and the absolute insane things that are happening in what was initially shown as kind of a quiet, idyllic setting. Question number three is The Wolfman. What is a book with a complicated character? And even though I've only read one entry in this series, I'm going to give this to Empire of Silence and its protagonist, Hadrian Marlowe. Now, Hadrian has gone through a lot just over the course of the first book. But this is told as kind of his deathbed confessional at the age of well over 1,000 years old. This is a sci-fi story after all. And the book continuously drops these hints of events that are coming in the future. He'll say things like, well, before I blew up a sun and killed an entire planet, this is how my life was. Things like confessing that he is basically the reason why an entire alien race has gone extinct. I don't know how that happened or has been enslaved. I don't know how that's happened because the first book doesn't get that far. But there's constantly these cuts into, oh yeah, here's something that's going to happen in the future. He'll look back and say, if I had only known that this was going to happen, or this was long before this event. And it does paint a very complex character, even within the course of the first book, because you're seeing him as a young man, you're seeing his struggles through these various misfortunes that happen to him early on in his life, and you're thinking, how does this kid get to be this, exalted hero, fallen warrior, this person who is like both revered and reviled in the future? And so definitely speaks to that complexity of character. This series is, I think at this point, 7 books long. I think the last one's coming out soon. And I'm very much looking forward to reading more. But as I said, even with that first book, you can tell Marlowe is an incredibly complex character. The next question is Frankenstein. What is a character that was misunderstood? And I'm going literal with this one. I spared you from Transformers, so remember that. But I'm being literal here with Finlay Donovan, which premise relies on the idea that this character is misunderstood. So if you're unaware, Finlay Donovan is about an author who writes in the murder mystery genre, and she's meeting her publicist at a Starbucks or something like that, talking about her book. She's overheard by another lady, and that lady thinks that Finlay Donovan is a hired killer. She's an assassin. And so tries to hire her to find out, to kill her husband. And from there, it just spirals out of control. But the entire thing is like an old comedy of errors where it's all predicated on this one bit of mistaken identity, and then that keeps on snowballing as the story goes on, where there's lots of cases of misunderstanding situations, misunderstanding identities, all leading to a pretty fun whodunit. Now, I've heard the sequels to this book are hit or miss. I think the second one was fairly well received. I think somewhere in the middle they're kind of tapering off. But we have several books in this series. I would highly recommend the first one. It was a lot of fun. If you want a story that just goes off the rails because of these misunderstandings, it's really great. Next question is Bride of Frankenstein. Name a book sequel that you feel was better than the first. And it's not by a wide margin, but I do feel like Starsight was a better book than Skyward. One of the things I loved most about this was the choice to completely change the setting of the book. We were kind of in a bottle story in the first book of the series, where all of humanity was kind of relegated to one planet. In this one, Spensa finds herself off-world, and we really open up to the galactic scale of the book. We see a lot of different races and the way that they work. We get a lot more of the creative designs, alien designs and things. I like that Sanderson went in that direction. This isn't the last time that Spensa finds herself kind of shunted into a different place and has to rebuild her squad from nothing to face the newest challenge that she's trying to overcome. But it was the most surprising because it was the first time that had happened. I like the way that it built up Spensa's character a little bit more. She had to get out of her comfort zone, do something that she was never trained for and she hadn't encountered before, but also to see the politics of this grander universe and realize that there's more complexity to the life outside of the human colony than we assumed in book 1. This one also introduces the primary antagonists of the story, and at least in one case, I feel like they're a fairly complex, interesting character, so that was also a plus for this book. If you are a Sanderson fan but haven't gotten outside of the Cosmere, I would say that this is a pretty good one to pick up. It trades in magic for more of a tech-based universe, but it's still got a lot of the same heart and a lot of the same quirky characters that you'll find in the Cosmere. Next up is Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is what is a unique book that you have. I wanted to do this question justice and find a really niche book that I own, so I'm going to go with Grand Chronicle, which is an in-universe history book for a living card game, trading card game, board game series from Level 99 Games. Within the pages of these books, we get the history of the world of Indines, which several card and board games take place in, including one of my favorite games of all time, BattleCon. This book is not only incredibly niche, but it's also like a very interesting read. It's not mixed media, but it does jumble together a number of different types of writing in order to tell the story. So a fair bit of it is just like basically a history textbook, but we've got like in-world book blurbs. We've got a section of interviews with people doing a pub crawl. We have dispatches from what's essentially their railway network, and just a lot of different weird ways in which they tell you about the history of this world. This is not for very many people. You have to be fairly invested in the world that it is trying to acclimate you to. Here is a festival schedule. Again, a very fun and interesting way to flesh out the world of these board and card games. Definitely one of the more special interest books that I own. Last up is Mummy. Name a book that wraps up nicely, and I'm going to go with 13 Stories by Jonathan Sims. Jonathan Sims is the creator of the Magnus Archives podcast, which is a very popular horror podcast that I've listened to most of. I'm still in season 5. I have to finish that up. 13 Stories is kind of a condensed version of what you would hear in the Magnus Archives. So this is a collection of short horror stories that are all taking part in the same apartment complex, or at least two inhabitants of the same apartment complex. And it culminates in a final chapter that jumps between a bunch of the different characters as they're called up to the top floor by the owner of the building. Now, one of the big complaints I heard from reading reviews of this book is that it has too many characters and it's too much to juggle. So know going in that you do need to have some sense of who these people are for the ending to work. I feel like it was about 10 or 12 characters that you needed to know. But if you can handle juggling that cast of characters, the end is very satisfying. All their story elements kind of come together in this final confrontation. It's very fun. The nice thing about it being a short story collection, essentially, is that if you're not vibing with one of the horror stories, you know that it's going to wrap up quickly and you're going to move on to something else. There were chapters in here that I didn't care for as much as others, but it wasn't taxing to read through them. So this would be my one for wraps up nicely, a great ending where all the different stories converge and come together in a very narratively satisfying way. Finally, we come to the tag portion of the video. I'm only going to tag one other content creator for this, but if you feel so inclined to pick this up and do your own version of this book tag, feel free, have fun. I will be tagging Nocturnal Nasties, which is a horror-themed YouTube channel. Any kind of horror media, books, movies, that type of thing. She commented on one of my videos earlier this week for Summerween, and I was able to check out a couple of her videos. If you like my style of presentation, I think that she has a very similar style and just kind of like sitting down and going for it. Her thoughts in the moment. So if you like my content and you like horror, very likely you'll like Nocturnal Nasties. Go check out our channel. And that's going to do it for me today. Let me know down in the comments what you would pick for these different categories. What have you been reading for Summerween? Have you read any of the books that I mentioned on this tag video? As always, I hope your reading journey is going well. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, take care.